My background was that of the typical American from California who grew up in the early 1960s. My parents educated the 5 children as Catholics, but with the divorce of my parents when I was 11 years, we moved away from the church. In those years it was very shameful to divorce and we feel marginalized. However, I never really felt connected with Christianity, even as a child. Somehow it never made sense for me and detected inconsistencies, even when I was little. I used to go to the communion and did not receive answers to my questions during catechism. In typical Californian style, we kind of grew on our own after the divorce. It was not a way to give orientation. Although my mother loved us very much, she suddenly became the only one responsible for the 5 children. I only saw my father about 5 or 6 times later thereof. Left to our own devices, I became pregnant at 16 and ended up married to the father of my children. The typical marriage made at hurry. We were married for 16 years and had 2 children. I lost the thing, hippie, when I got married in 1964 and all that drug business that was going on. To sum it up, I ended up leaving after all those years and fleeing to Sao Paulo, France to discover who I was and become liberated. What I found was booze, drugs, sex and rock and roll. I was in such a hurry to live that I was not in a hurry. I thought about morality or something. Just a completely hedonistic of life. I came to know about Islam through of a young man who had just arrived in America. He was from a large family and was here alone and feeling very lost with all the new experiences that the confronted. We found comfort in each other since I was also alone, without family or friends, for the first time in my life. I began to respect some of the qualities I saw in him. He was very honest and never made excuses. Saw a complete acceptance and trust in him that I have never experienced in anyone else before. He told me things about the Quran that were interesting to me. Era very calm and never pressured me in any way. I liked what I saw in it. The fact that he was honest really impressed me. I had never thought that a person could survive in life honestly and cleanly. He made me do the Shahada, the first time we were together, even though I hadn't any idea what it was. Sometimes I think even if I didn't know what I was saying, God knew and took it seriously. Actually, I had a lot of fear of Islam, because I feared that God would make me boring and imprisoned if I become Muslim. I was so naive about Islam that my perceptions were very distorted. He carried all the disinformation like all Americans. What I had in my sick mind was some correlation with the nuns who I had seen it as a child. They seemed to be trapped in a prison of morality. I always remember the feeling that they were lonely and dull and all that what they did was pray. To me they seemed to have an empty life. At that point it wasn't allowed anything that seemed fun. But God is truly big. Somehow he gave me all the rope I needed to hang myself and be there when I fell. After meeting this man I went even more a few years, wandering in the jungle. After this guy and I got together I called the mosque and asked if I could get a copy of the Quran. I just wanted to know more about it. I never intended to become Muslim. Well, when I read the beginning of the Yusuf Ali's edit, the summary actually cried. I was flabbergasted by the beauty, mercy and grace. It touched me in a way that nothing else had done. When I read Fatiha I knew it was something very special, but it certainly wasn't ready to accept or understand even a fragment of it. The beauty of your verses galvanized me. With many of the fundamental principles it could not imagine myself agreeing or understanding. What impressed me the most were the forgiveness and mercy. That incredible benevolence of Allah. I would need many of those blessings with the kind of life I was leading and continued to lead for many more years. Although he read the Quran and gradually began to truly and deeply believe in him in my heart as the words of God, I wasn't ready to give up my free lifestyle yet. Much like a baby taking small steps in an unknown world. Recently I was asked, how difficult is it to suddenly stop and let go of things that had you been doing when you became a Muslim? It wasn't hard because I didn't give up your welcome suddenly. 5 years have passed since I started reading the Quran until you make the conscious decision to stop eating pork. My family, it was Italian and pork was a staple of our kitchen. But when I said to myself after 5 years of reading the Quran that maybe I should give up because Allah had prescribed it for us as unclean, it was very difficult. I took a year of eating and feeling guilty before I started to feel nauseous when ate. Now I just look at the salami in the supermarket and say, it's one thing that Allah asks of us. That's how I feel about the Ramadan. I asked one person what was the first thing they thought when I realized that Ramadan was coming. Said the first thing was to stay tense and, soon after, happy. That's what I also think. That feeling of anxiety, I think because we know that we face a challenge and we fear failure. And then we think of that sweet feeling of breaking the fast at the right time and knowing that offered Allah another day in honor of your devotion to Him. Because it is a small thing that He asks of us. Fast for just a month, really try for just 1 month, follow His path in a very concentrated and focused way. Sometimes when I feel temptation during Ramadan, I say to myself, it's a small thing that He asks of us, and grants us so many mercies and forgiveness. Drinking, promiscuity, theft, lies, cheating, etc. Little by little they have passed away over these 13 years. Now when I look back I can't even imagine that the person behaving that way it was me. It's so different from who I am today. The drink knocked me down and Allah was there to help me get up. I had disappointed my children and He was certainly a bad example for them. But mashallah, both have the Holy Quran in your homes today and see the different person I have become because of my sincere and deep belief in Him. My granddaughters believe in Allah and they always want to hear stories from God. My father is gone, but my mother is surprisingly tolerant of my belief in Islam. Although sometimes she thinks it's just a phase. My brothers and sisters are all respectful of my belief, although they also have many of the stereotypes and misconceptions that many Americans have. One thing I've had a great deal with big problem when I finally accepted that I was becoming a Muslim was some of the attitudes of Muslims I encountered. Occasionally I tried to go to but was generally disappointed by the questions or instructions that I received from brothers and sisters there. Commonly the first question is, who is your husband? If I said I didn't have one, I was looked at with suspicion and usually no one he talked to me after that. They said that Allah would not accept my prayers because my nails were painted. This can be very discouraging for someone seeking knowledge and contact with Allah and the Islamic community. Was instructed to do some unusual things that I found strange, to say the minimum. It took me about 7 years to differentiate between cultural customs and Islamic practices. From the conversations I have had with other converts I know that had similar experiences. But there are sweet memories of praying alongside my sisters during Ramadan or Jummah, when I felt so close to Allah that I wept with gratitude for the gift He gave me, the Quran and Islam. Sometimes I see this journey like one that Allah has chosen for me and from which He will not leave me go out. Of course, I came to be very grateful for His patience and tolerance with my weakness. I still have many goals that I want to achieve with my faith. I came to accept my belief in Islam as a progression, a journey, a seed that was planted and turned into a strong and living presence in my soul. I'm not perfect, but I believe I am a better Muslim this year than she was last year. I know by the number of things that I left behind that were not pleasing to Allah. I know that with every Ramadan passing I can look back on my first week attempts to fast, and realize that I can look forward to this month and that Allah will be there to help me in moments of weakness. My children respect me, honor my mother as Allah asks us. I came to accept the difficulties in my life as opportunities for Allah to strengthen me or let me practice patience or tolerance. Or, make me grow, in some way. For me, embracing Islam was the greatest gift that has been given to me. I am still grateful and awestruck by him.